Hey everyone, how's it going? So Dragon Ball FighterZ comes out tomorrow. It looks brilliant, it plays like a dream, it's Dragon Ball Z, so there's a real mainstream appeal there. And because of that, I expect that a lot of people are going to be playing Dragon Ball FighterZ as their first ever fighting game. This is going to be, for a lot of people, their entry point into this genre. And so the purpose of this video today is to talk kind of generally about getting into fighting games, the mindset that you should be in as a beginner, and some just really basic tips for things like picking characters and learning from the ground up when you don't have a foundation to springboard off of. And I'm doing this because I would love for people to stick with it, because fighting games are wonderful, and I want people to go, hey, I like this one, let me try some others out. And the really nice thing is that once you lay the groundwork, the next time that you start a new fighting game up, it isn't as hard to learn. You have some framework, you have translatable skills, and you know how to learn a fighting game. You've learned how to learn, as kind of weird as that sounds, so the learning process becomes a lot quicker. It's like having a methodology for learning a second language. If you have a methodology, then learning subsequent languages after that one becomes easier. So first, I want to talk about picking a game to get into in the first place. We started this video off talking about Dragon Ball FighterZ, and so if you are picking up Dragon Ball FighterZ because you're a DBZ fan, you're on the right foot. You're off on the right foot, to be honest. Because the thing is, you need some kind of hook. You need to actually be enthusiastic about what you're getting into, because fighting games are so hard. They're really difficult. Fighting games are enormously complex monsters. And if there isn't some aspect of the game that just connects with you inherently, some intrinsic element of it that you just like, you're never going to stick with it to the point where you see the beauty of what fighting games can be. You're never really going to dig through all the mud to find the appeal, right? Because early on, this is a reality that I want to emphasize, that I really want to impart upon you. Because early on, you are going to lose. You're going to lose so much. You're not adequately prepared for how much you are going to lose and how bad it's going to feel sometimes and how salty you're going to get over that. Don't play with the expectation that you're going to win a lot. Or that, maybe you will. I don't know. But there is the reality that you'll go like 100 games without a win. That might be overstating it. And listen, I'm not trying to deter you. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to be very honest about the reality here. Because I, more than anything, want you to play with the intention of learning instead of the intention of winning. Try to win. Don't go out of your way to lose. But play with the goal of learning something, of improving, because the early hump is brutal. It's where most people quit, because it's the most time-consuming, it's the most demoralizing part. It's the part where progress seems really slow, and it's nebulous, and you don't really feel it that much, and you lose so much. But like I always say, you have to love self-improvement more than you hate losing. And being enthusiastic about what you're playing is going to be the thing that most helps you over that hump. So don't look for what's popular or new, what's the easiest to learn. Like, don't solicit me for advice or anyone else for like, hey, I kind of have a tepid interest in fighting games. That's a good place to start, is having an interest in fighting games. But if that's that vague, it's hard to really recommend something to you. Nobody can really tell you where to start. That really has to be on you. And people ask me that a lot, like, especially what's the easiest fighting game to get into? And I think that question is irrelevant. And it comes from a good place, but it's not relevant. If you don't feel a connection before you even boot the game up, I don't think it matters how beginner-friendly it is, because it can only get so beginner-friendly. You're not going to like it enough, most likely, to lose 100 times trying to hone an arcane skill set. Even the most beginner-friendly fighting game can only do so much to ease you in, because they're all really difficult. Dragon Ball FighterZ, to get back to that, I don't think this is the most beginner-friendly game. I think Team Hyper Fighters are particularly rough because of their speed, the multitude of really complex mechanics, the number of characters that you have to learn because it's 3v3 or in Infinite's case 2v2, and the chaotic nature of them. But if you like DBZ, and if you just inherently find that Dragon Ball FighterZ appeals to you, this is going to be a good entry point for you because, again, there's that inherent appeal. Before you even lay hands on a controller, you know, I like DBZ. This game is like such a great representation of what DBZ is and what it's like in game form. So there's that going for you. And because you have that connection, that might make you more likely to say, hey, I like this enough to get good and improve. And that's honestly the most fundamental thing. That's the most important thing starting out. It's not, it has nothing to do with even picking a controller up and starting to play. By the way, my answer to what character should I pick in that kind of question, that's exactly the same. Watch some character trailers, see who looks appealing to you. There's one universal truth in learning anything, any skill, anything at all. You will find it easier to commit yourself to learning something that you care about, that you feel passionate about. Don't say, I'm going to put 100 hours into learning this character and hope that I come to care about playing him or her later. Don't bank on that coming after the fact. Think about it like selecting a major for college. It's not nearly that important a choice, but you get the idea. What do you like? What do you want to do? You could go to school to be an engineer or a doctor, and those are lucrative professions, but if you have no passion for any of the subject matter in those fields, is that really the best choice for you? Treat character selection kind of like that. Choose characters that appeal to you. I started Killer Instinct going, I think Hisako is the coolest. I'm going to play the shit out of her. It would have been way easier for me to start with Jago, because Jago is something that I have like a mental schema for. I know the kind of character he is, so I could have eased myself into the systems of Killer Instinct and getting familiar with that game by choosing him and been ultimately more comfortable. I would have been a lot less likely to stick with Killer Instinct because he just doesn't appeal to me as a character. Hisako has a bunch of tools that I really like, and I think her design is just radical, and as is her playstyle. She has a lot going on that I just like, so even though she's less beginner-friendly, I just started playing her off the bat, and that helped me stick with KI through that rough period where I'm getting over that hump of learning the game and losing a lot. If you look at a character trailer and you go, wow, that design appeals to me, or whoa, that character's doing a bunch of cool shit, I like that, pick that character. Just go for it. Next, I want to give some more general advice for learning a fighting game from the ground up. No fundamentals or experience to draw from. So once you pick your character or characters in Dragon Ball FighterZ's case, honestly, before anything else, I would advise getting comfortable with two things. One is your normals. In a 6-button fighter like Street Fighter or KI, these are your 3 punch buttons and your 3 kick buttons. In DBFZ, this is your A, B, C, and S, or your light, medium, and heavy, and your key blast. Become intimately familiar with those buttons. They are your most basic offensive tool. What are your longest range buttons? What's your safest button? What's your anti-air? What's the button that you want to use when you jump in on someone? Stuff like that. When is it appropriate to press which button? Learn your ranges. What's safe? What's unsafe? Get comfortable with those tools. And then the other thing is blocking and teching throws. Those are your basic defensive tools. In most fighting games, you have overheads, you have lows, and you have throws. You block overheads by holding back and standing, you block lows by holding down back, and you tech by hitting throw at the same time as your opponent. The majority of the time, this is how people are going to open you up. They're going to mix these three things together, and that's what we call a mix-up game. Sometimes you're going to be in a situation where you just have to guess whether or not something's going to be a high or a low, or a hit or a throw. That's a 50-50, but those are more rare. Most of the time that you get opened up, it's going to be because you either weren't blocking, or because you weren't blocking correctly, or because you didn't tech a throw, or because you were trying too hard to hit buttons. And I guess the other aspect of that is there's also cross-ups. When somebody jumps over you and hits you from the other side, you have to block in the opposite direction, obviously. That can be a lot easier said than done. But those are your defensive tools. So concentrate on the spacing of your normals and the properties of those buttons and your defense when you first start learning a fighting game. And I should also mention the other thing that you're probably going to have to spend some time drilling is stuff like dashing and just general movement. Eventually, you're going to get comfortable enough where you can recognize when to dash, when to jump, when to walk backwards or forwards, and you'll be able to walk forwards and block immediately as needed, instead of just kind of feeling like you have to hold down back constantly. But until then, just get comfortable moving. And for the love of God, please do not abuse jumping. It's a really bad habit that you can really find yourself getting into early on. There's nothing wrong with jumping, but it is a decision. So you need to be able to justify why you made that decision. If you find yourself jumping a lot, stop and ask yourself, what am I doing with this jump? What is the purpose of what I am doing right now? And that's just generally good advice. And then once you're comfortable, you can start layering other elements into your game plan. In this case, if you're new, start learning your character's specials. If you're new to fighting games, they are going to feel awkward to perform at first. That will subside over time, so drill special motions until they are embedded in your muscle memory. Notice that I haven't talked about specific game mechanics or combos yet. Those things are irrelevant for you at this point. Once you're comfortable with everything else and you can perform specials at will and all that stuff, start getting into like the specific mechanics of the game that you're playing. And start actually learning the game itself, the broader aspects and the more complex elements of it, the mechanics. And then eventually you could start working on things like varying your offense up a bit, adding to your own mix-up game with highs, lows, cross-ups, really basic frame traps, stuff like that. And in learning some more intermediate offense, you'll learn to spot when these things are being used against you, and hopefully your defense will gradually improve as well. Then you can finally start on some basic combos. People often use the excuse that I don't play fighting games because I don't have time to memorize combos. But that's really faulty thinking. Combos come much later when you learn a new game. You always start with your fundamentals. Again, familiarity with your buttons, being comfortable playing defense, familiarity with the nuances of the game and movement and its systems and how to open people up. If you start a fighting game up and the first thing you do is try to start learning combos, you are kneecapping yourself. You learn combos after you're familiar and comfortable with the game, and after you can open people up effectively. If you spend 20 hours in training mode just getting good at doing one combo, and then you load an online match up, you're going to wind up going into that match and getting frustrated because, one, you can't land that combo that you invested all of your time and energy into, and two, you're going to get blown up for it because you're just doing a full combo as a block string and not recognizing when something is hitting or when something is being blocked and when to stop that block string before it becomes unsafe. Combos are important when you have a game plan and the tools to execute on that game plan. And what I'd advise when learning combos is to start small. I mean really small. Like Ryu's low forward fireball is a 2-hit combo in Street Fighter. It's crouching medium kick canceled into a fireball. Start there. Start that simple. button press, special cancel. From there, go into your character's easier bread and butters. And like with learning any long sequence, chunk it up. You memorize phone numbers by splitting the 10 numbers into discrete chunks. Usually 3 chunks for a phone number. 111, 2222, 333. You can chunk combos up the same way. And if you learn them like that, it actually makes it easier down the line because combos are usually discrete chunks just chained together, and you can often rearrange those chunks to fit the situation, especially in a hyper fighter like Dragon Ball FighterZ. If you learn it all as one long block, or one long sequence, it becomes more difficult for you to rearrange the components of that combo, and thus your gameplay becomes a little bit more rigid. But that's all, like, that's already way more advanced than where we need to go for this video. Remember, just start small, learn basic B&Bs, and chunk. As an aside, it also helps to be familiar with the structure of how combos are kind of created for your specific game. Like, let's take Killer Instinct as an example. KI has a very particular structure, which is usually referred to as the Golden Path. It's a special that counts as what is called an opener. Auto doubles, which are just normals that hit twice in this combo structure. Linker, Ender, to cash the damage out. Linkers are just specials between auto doubles. And you can kind of keep going between auto double linker, auto double linker, auto double linker over and over until you have to end it, or until it gets broken or blows out. But it has this structure of opener, auto double, linker, ender, and moves tend to fit into one of those 4 categories. Hyper fighters usually have what is called a magic series. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, your magic series is just light, medium, hard, hard, light, medium, hard. That should be your starting point if you're getting into Dragon Ball FighterZ. It should be that magic series. Again, light, medium, hard, hard, light, medium, hard. It follows a super easy sequence. It's universal for all characters, and it gives you a foundation to experiment with. Once you're familiar with that, you start learning how to add specials in, you start learning how to use assists to extend those combos, and you start learning about DHCs and supers and all that stuff. And now, as we wrap up, I want to go back and emphasize something. Fighting games are really hard, but because they're so complex, because they are so hard, they're incredibly rewarding, and the payoff for sticking with them is profoundly satisfying. And they will give you a tool set that will help you appreciate other fighting games that might have looked too intimidating before, once you learn your first one. But you have to love self-improvement and be willing to stick it out before you can get there. So in closing, learn to love the process. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy. Have a good one. Enjoy Dragon Ball FighterZ tomorrow.